Back in 2018, Chinese social media and dating stock Momo was growing both revenue and earnings at over 60%. The stock hit an all-time high before a string of bad news sent the stock spiraling over 80%. The stock may have recently established a bottom after rising 50% this year, so let's discuss whether this run is merely a bear trap or whether or not Momo is ripe for a huge rebound. So let's get straight into it then and start with the problems that sent Momo falling in the first place. The bad news began when Alibaba decided to unload their 20% stake in the business back in 2017. This showed a lack of confidence from Baba, but also killed a possibility that they would be acquiring the social media startup or even integrating the app into some of their services. These negative connotations were compounded further when Chinese tech stocks all took a beating over trade wars between the US and China. Despite a recovery for the Chinese stock market, Momo couldn't catch a break, and the company was targeted by short sellers who claimed that the app was being used for illegal gambling activity and money laundering. The reports turned out to be correct, and Momo did have to restructure the business to clamp down on this illegal activity, and since they did that, the company has reported an alarming deceleration in earnings growth, and this has pushed the stock even lower. Finally, the cherry on top for Momo was the coronavirus, given that their app is essentially the Tinder or Bumble of China, and during the pandemic, of course, there's been nowhere to go out on dates, and in most regions it's been illegal to meet up with strangers, and therefore the key reason behind why people use Momo's app has become redundant. So that's the bad news and the story behind Momo's disastrous last couple of years. But now let's talk about the positives and whether or not Momo could now represent a huge buying opportunity. Firstly, it's worth noting that just before the problem started in 2018, Momo acquired rival platform Tantan, giving it complete control of the online dating market in China. Due to the pandemic, we've not yet seen any noticeable revenue or earnings growth from this acquisition. However, when the world goes back to normal, Momo should benefit massively from their Tinder-like apps. Not only that, but Momo and Tantan had barely scratched the surface in terms of monetizing their platforms before the lockdown, and therefore the opportunity for ad revenue growth is huge. Lastly, I want to point out a few fundamentals that I think make Momo stock quite attractive, and although Momo's recent lack of revenue growth makes it hard to compare to other growth stocks, it is likely that when lockdown's lifted, Momo will benefit considerably, and therefore I'm going to treat it kind of like a growth stock. With that in mind, Momo's price to sales ratio of less than 2 is ridiculously cheap, and if you believe the company can rediscover its mojo when lockdown is lifted and people start dating again. For reference, despite posting 3-year revenue growth that beats the likes of Snap and Pinterest and many other social media platforms, Momo trades 15 to 20 times cheaper on a price to sales ratio than their peers. Not only that, but Momo is extremely profitable, has great cash flow and pays a 3% dividend. So there you go, that's the story of Momo. If you didn't already know, then hopefully you now understand the background of the stock and can make an informed decision on whether or not to join in the recent rally. As I mentioned above, there are numerous risks attached to this name. However, there are signs the stock is bottoming, and therefore those who avoided trying to catch this falling knife may well be tempted back into the stock. Before you go, please click the like button if you learned something. It takes literally 2 seconds, but has a really positive impact on my channel as well as my mood. Subscribe to the channel to keep me motivated to produce more videos on all of the best growth stocks and cryptocurrencies out there. Stay tuned, I've got loads of cool videos in the pipeline. Obviously, if you subscribe, you'll get a notification when they come out. So hit subscribe and remember that your money should be working for you and not the other way around.